I'm going to introduce the first speaker, Craig Harries. Craig is an old friend of mine who I first met in New York, I believe. Hong Kong, then New York. And we've got pluses on many occasions. So he now runs a new wonderful ad agency called AMP, who did a lot of work with us on the Research Liberation Front website, etc. So I thank you to AMP. And I would just like to hand over to Craig. Now, this timing starts. Ready, steady, go.
Okay, thanks Steve. So I'm going to talk about the power of positive thinking. I have no idea how this is going to go, so we'll see. Is the glass half empty or half full? I guess all of us would like to think that it's half full, because it's a good thing to be positive. And next one. Here's a great example of positive thinking. Winston Churchill quote, and obviously positive thinking is a very powerful thing. You can achieve or overcome incredible obstacles if you are a positive thinker. Okay. Wayne Rooney, fascinating example. Psychologists believe that the reason why Wayne Rooney is so successful is that he cannot comprehend failure at all. So when he has a ball at his feet, he's going to score a goal in his mind, and he has no element of doubt or indecision at all. And so that's the power of Wayne Rooney. England versus Argentina. Now, as a nation, we're actually not a very positive nation. We're quite cynical. We have a press which is very critical, and we actually like to celebrate people's failures. A good example here, nobody is really immune. Prince Harry there, you can see. And I would argue that research is conducted from a negative point of view. We are always looking for this wonderful word, disaster checking. How often have we heard that phrase come up in research? When really, if we took a more positive view, I believe we would actually get much more out of research and understand products better. And having been a client in a former life, I kind of understand why that's the case, because your job's on the line if things don't work out correctly. So you're trying to control as many variables as possible, and you're looking to control things and make sure there is no doubt in your mind that that product is going to succeed. And so what do? We put a bunch of complete strangers in their environment. We fire questions at them and put them on the spot and use the pressure of the situation to make sure they actually work, come up with a response, because we're paying them. And so it is no wonder that, no, that's the wrong slide, okay. Even if we do it online or via the phone, you get the same kind of response, because we're very suspicious of things that we don't understand. So anything new or different or that doesn't fit with our current beliefs is treated with suspicion. Now, how many products, I mean, advertising history and marketing history is littered with examples of brands that wouldn't exist if people had listened to respondents. And so from the Sony Walkman to Dyson vacuum cleaners, 118 campaign, I'll come on to talk about that in a minute, but these are campaigns that didn't do that well. And so it's no surprise that 8 out of 10 new products actually fail. That's the old statistic, I don't know whether it's changed, but here's an example of new, better tasting Coke. We all know about that one. And maybe it's because we're going around about things the wrong way. Maybe we're looking for the negatives rather than focusing on the positives. And despite having the best brains working on these projects, we've got the best creatives, we've got spent thousands of millions of pounds, months and months, sometimes years developing projects. We still rely on a handful of housewives in Croydon to actually make a decision about whether we should go ahead. Now, I got some inspiration from this guy. His name's Dr. David Cooper-Ryder. He's an expert in organisational behaviour. What's great about him is he realised that all these re-engineering exercises in big companies weren't actually making a difference. And he realised they were asking the wrong questions. They were starting with the problem rather than focusing on the strengths and the amazing, incredible things about organisations. So his whole approach is looking for what organisations do well and actually amplifying it and making it better and using that to build a more successful organisation and get people behind it. As a little quote there. And so what he does is gets people in a room and says, when have you felt like you were enjoying your job the best? When did you feel really proud to work for this organisation? What are the things that it does really well? Rather than focusing on all the crappy things that make your life hell and that make things difficult. And I would argue that this is more revealing than other approaches. Now, let's take an example of the Porsche 911. If you think about that product, it shouldn't really exist anymore. It doesn't handle particularly well because the weight's distributed badly. They used to overheat. There's no storage space. And yet it's one of the most desirable cars there is now because it's consistently been refined. But I would argue that the 911 wouldn't exist if it was down to research. Here's an example of what people do with a product that didn't get through research, and yet it's inspired a whole group of consumers out there and people. And you can see if you ask people to be positive with a product, what they can do with it. Employees is a great asset within a business. We never think to employ them, talk to them, and yet they never ask their opinion, and they're usually the last to find out about a new campaign or a new product launch. But if you get them in early and try and ask them how they could make their job better, then I would argue you'd have a more successful product. Customers, Orange texted millions and millions of its customers and recruited them to develop a whole campaign. And that is a really positive example of focusing on the good things about the brand. So I'll leave you with this last point. I think there's 3 things that I would recommend. Get people to talk about their good experiences if we're doing research, rather than the negative ones. Relate it back to the product or the campaign, and then charge them with making the idea or the campaign or the product better and making it a success. And I believe then the glass will be half full rather than half empty, and we'll have more successes with research. Thank you.
Craig Harries.